What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here. A little different take this month. We have the monthly Gemrate numbers, but I kind of wanted to treat this more as kind of like the current state of grading of where we are, and I have some data to kind of back some things up that we commonly say around here. So we'll take a quick glance at these, but generally speaking, I want to keep this a little bit more macro level. So, not surprising, PSA comes in just over 1 million cards. CGC, they see a major drop off. Once again, we covered this last month. They had the repack product thing running with PWCC and the Omega Mystery Box that kind of juiced their numbers. We're seeing that falling off. We don't know if that's 100% complete yet or not. We'll probably have a better idea with the December numbers to start the beginning of the year. SGC, churning along, 120K, got some great specials running. They're up a ton year over year, month over month, they're down. Generally speaking, I should have mentioned this at the beginning, month over month, everything is down slightly. It's Thanksgiving month. You lose a day to Thanksgiving and probably the day after Thanksgiving, if we're all being honest. A lot of people take that whole, get that 4-day weekend going. So not surprised to see a little pullback. I would expect next month's numbers to be pretty similar because once again, people are taking more time off, half days, this, that, the other thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little 5% drop off to maybe stability with the December numbers. And then we'll see how things rebound come January once everyone's back to the real world. Beckett had the biggest drop at 20% month over month, 20% up year over year. Everybody's up year over year. I don't think that we'll have a great year over year idea until later into this year, because everyone's still kind of adjusting. Some people were in post-pandemic nonsense last year at this time, still catching up on backlogs. So I like the year-over-year numbers. I'm just not sure how much they're telling us at this point. We'll see what those look like as we venture into next year, because 2023 is really when grading fully opened up. Remember, 1 year ago, in December, PSA was opening up lottery submissions for value and bulk grading. You had to get in a queue and see if you got through, and that was a whole thing. That was only 1 year ago. So it'll be interesting to see what these numbers look like year over year as we march through 2024. I think that'll give us a much better judge of where these individual companies are at. We'll look at the individual sports numbers really quickly here. Pretty much where they have been, though. CGC actually did see a decent bump up in sports. Everyone else down about 5 or 10%. Pretty much what you would expect. PSA, clear number 1. SGC, clear number 2. Beckett 3, battling with CGC at the 3-4 slot. TCG side, PSA dominates that category. CGC, we're not 100% sure yet. Beckett coming in a clear 3rd, and then SGC coming in a clear 4th. SGC up big year over year, but only up slightly month over month, and that's with them aggressively pushing that. So I'm sure they would probably like to see that number be a little bit better. Now, it's kind of transitioned into like just a more general macro chat. So my pal Ryan over at Gemrate, he has some fun stuff coming this week. I'll probably do, in fact, I most certainly will do a standalone video on this. He has been working in the background on a Universal Pop report. The stuff that's in there is going to be, I think, I don't want to say game changing, but it's really going to shine a light on a lot of things in regards to data. And there are just some really good uses of this tool that I could see in the future. We'll talk more about that in a separate video, but I've been playing around. I kind of got some back end access to view a small portion of it. And it really kind of shows what types of cards go where. So we talk a lot. PSA, clearly, you are going to maximize your value. This is kind of where we currently sit in the state of things. PSA is for maximum value, maximum ROI. If you're talking about on the bulk level, the value level, they are not going to be the fastest. You're looking at a 2-month turnaround time, give or take. SGC is your vintage king. I shouldn't say king. They compete very equally price-wise with PSA. Very well respected in the vintage market. trying to gain a foothold in the modern market. They grade a lot, but there's still a considerable price gap between the two. Maybe we'll talk more about that. I keep meaning to do that video, and it just keeps eluding me because random drama pops up. Beckett. Oh, Beckett. Beckett is definitely the niche grader at this point in time. People want to use them for higher end stuff, 90s stuff, early 2000s stuff. And to be quite honest, given that they haven't said a peep, they seem fairly content with doing that. I should mention SGC is also the home of the quick turn and burn. They are ridiculously fast. You get your cards back in 5 or 10 days. So you could send off to them, get them back quick, and flip them as fast as possible. You might not maximize the value, but you're getting the turnaround time advantage on them. Sorry, like I was saying for Beckett, I think Beckett is content to, at least at the moment, to be the grading company that grades the 90s and 2000s stuff and an occasional high-end thing. I don't know in its current state and form, and I don't know if this is a good business decision or not. I think it's going to hurt them in the long term because people are going to get less and less used to using them. I don't know that Beckett wants to grade. I'm sure someone from Beckett would say, of course, they want to grade a card, but Beckett doesn't seem like a company that wants to grade a Corbin Carroll base refractor from Topps Chrome. They just don't. They don't act like one. They don't price like it. They don't have turnaround times like it. They don't. They feel like they would rather grade a 93 SP Jeter, 5 of those a month, than 100 Corbin Carroll Topps Chrome refractors. Beckett still has the name behind it. They still have a nice case. People like the subgrades, but they just do not have the capacity, it seems like, to scale, nor the inclination to scale. Now, that's kind of the general narrative about all 4 of those. I skipped CGC, sorry. CGC, they've seemed to carve out a very strong niche in TCG. Sports cards, they're still trying to figure it out. I know a lot of people like to use them for PC because they like the case, and they have decently quick turnaround times. They got a little slower while they were dealing with this Omega mystery box nonsense, but they are definitely, in the current state of things, beyond, people just using them to use them, they're definitely the odd man out. So let's look at some things. We have some data from Gemrate to kind of back this stuff up. This is some back-end stuff on his Universal Pop report. It's called the Iconic 100. It is the most 100 iconic cards based off the PWCC list. We're not going to run down all 100 cards. What he did was track over the last year what cards went to what grading company in regards to, of this certain card, how many were going to each grader. And some of this data is absolutely fascinating. So let's look at 86 Fleer Jordan, for example. High-end card, obviously. Very easy to move, very liquid. PSA is going to dominate in every one of these categories. The key thing to pay attention to is where are the other 3. So this is a bar graph. You can just scroll across. It shows you, and you do not have public access to this at the moment. But you could see, like in March of 2023, PSA graded 158 86 Jordans. BGS got 53. SGC got 30. CGC got 1. So PSA obviously has the lion's share of it. And then generally speaking, Beckett has kind of the next little slice of the pie, followed up by SGC. If you just kind of glance through that over the course of, this goes from January 2022, to November 2023. So almost the last 2 years. So pretty evenly split, give or take, depending on the month between Beckett and SGC. You can see on the bar graphs here, they basically stay pretty close together. So an 86 Fleer Jordan, 50 to 60% of them are going to go to PSA, and then it's going to be split a little bit between SGC and Beckett. Let's look at the 89 Griffey Upper Deck. Classic card. Everybody loves that card. PSA dominates this one. Absolutely dominates it. SGC slips in a little bit. Very little Beckett on this one. We also see CGC creeping in a little bit. On the 86 Fleer Jordan, CGC wasn't on there at all. Now, let's look at a more vintage example, shall we? Like a 54 Hank Aaron. So here's the 54 Aaron, Topps. What do we see here? More even split. I mean, PSA is getting a lot of it. They're getting most of it, but SGC is right there. If we look at, let's just look at October. 23 went to PSA, 22 went to SGC, 0 went to Beckett, 0 went to CGC. The month before that, September 2023, PSA got 29, SGC got 28, Beckett got 3. This most recent month in November, PSA got 34, SGC 26, BGS 4, CGC 2. You don't see a lot of CGC on here. You see very little Beckett on here. When it comes to old school hardcore vintage, the majority goes to PSA. SGC is right there with them. Let's look at kind of the grail of modern TCG. 99 Pokemon Charizard, or Charlizard, as I like to call it, Shadowless First Edition. Once again, PSA dominates the category. A lot of red on here. Very little black. Black is SGC. Basically non-existent. The other thing we see, though, is now CGC is in play. You can see the amount of green with CGC getting in the mix, and then Beckett is also mixed in. Also interesting to see, once CGC kind of really came onto the scene, this is July 2022, when CGC really kind of started taking off. Look at, Beckett had a decent amount of market share compared to PSA. Now CGC comes in, and look at the month over months as CGC really ate into the Beckett side of things and a little bit of the PSA side of things. So very interesting to kind of see this information laid out like this. Once again, PSA dominates this category for the most part. And then you see in the more recent times, CGC really catching up to Beckett in regards to the TCG side of things, and even taking that little chunk out of PSA. Here's another vintage example right below it. 58 Topps Jim Brown. Once again, dominated by PSA, but not as much. There are very much some months that SGC is grading more than PSA. Look at August 2023. PSA added 30 to the pop report. SGC added 57. Last month, November, PSA 38, SGC 25. Month before that, PSA 55, SGC 26. There are some months where this is very even. September, PSA 36, SGC 35. For the most part, PSA controls it, but SGC is right there with them in vintage. Now, that's been the case for a while. That's not really new information. Here's a good one. 93 SP Derek Jeter. Popular card, super condition sensitive. Once again, PSA dominates, but now you see Beckett come back into play. Look at all the light blue across the last 2 years on that chart, and right above it on the chart and graph portion, you could see those two lines intersecting each other quite a bit. When you get into that 90s, 2000s, higher end rookies, inserts, whatever, Beckett rears its ugly head again. This is a popular card to grade in Beckett as well. Because of the super condition sensitive nature of it, you might be able to squeeze out a half grade higher because of the subgrades. People do that all the time. Oh, I don't think this could PSA 10, but I think it could get a BGS 9.5. In a case of a card like this that's super condition sensitive, people will be excited to chase a BGS 9 instead of maybe a PSA 8. So Beckett sneaks back in on this one. Let's switch over, look at cards a little bit lower down in the rank. How about a LeBron Topps Chrome 03? Once again, Beckett comes back into play here, kind of dominating SGC in this category. SGC not getting a ton of these, PSA getting a bulk of it. Beckett clearly controlling second place on this card. Once again, that early 2000s, late 90s, insert higher end rookie. CGC basically getting none of it. And then one last vintage example that we'll do. Maze, 52 Topps, rinse and repeat. PSA controls the category, but SGC is right there with them. And then Beckett and CGC are basically non-existent when it comes to vintage. So like I said, we kind of talk about this and we break this stuff down and we throw these things out there, but here is the data to kind of actually back it up. When it comes to vintage, PSA and SGC control the space. When it comes to that 90s, 2000s stuff, Beckett creeps its head in there. They say, hey, don't forget about us. It's not surprising. That's when they were also peak of the market, late 90s, early 2000s. So a lot of those cards end up in those slabs. A lot of those cards transact in those slabs. The condition-like nature of those cards A lot of them end up in those slabs. And then CGC, when we looked at the Charizard, comes in like a wrecking ball. So on the TCG side, CGC is not dominating the category. PSA obviously is, but they become a major player when you get into the Beckett and SGCs of the world and kind of push them out of the way. Now, what about the ultra modern side of things? Here is, and this is sneak peek of what the Universal Pop report is going to look like over on Gemrate's website. What I'm looking at here is the Universal Pop report for 2023 Topps Chrome Baseball. This launched the National, so we've had plenty of time for this stuff to kind of cycle through the system. Anyone that sent anything to bulk to any one of the companies would have it back in hand by now. What I was curious about is, hey, what grading companies are getting just a Corbin Carroll base refractor? Just the everyman's card, pull a pack, cool. I hit a Corbin Carroll refractor. I want to send this thing off and get it graded, maybe keep it, maybe sell it, whatever the case might be. 8, this is the total number graded. 895 have been graded so far across all 4 major grading companies. 461 have gone to PSA. 423 have gone to SGC. 6 have gone to Beckett. 5 have gone to CGC. Overall, 42% gem rate. That's across all the companies on Corbin Carroll's refractor. PSA, SGC are dominating the ultra modern side of things. Beckett only getting 6 of these is a real rough look. CGC only getting 5 of these, also a rough look. I'm not surprised by this. SGC still does not have the resale value. I'm sorry, CGC still does not have the resale value in the sports card side of things. So for a card like this, unless you're grading it for PC, you're probably setting it for one of these two. Here, PSA, you're going to maximize your value. Here, SGC, you're going to maximize speed and turnaround times. And like I said, we'll dig into the comps on these in a separate video. Now, you might say, all right, well, that's a base refractor. Everyone sends autographs to Beckett. What about autographs? So nice thing about the Universal Pop report, I could just go over here, hit auto, and then sort by most graded. And then it's going to pull the same list up. I have it sorted by, like I said, most graded. Let's use Corbin Carroll as the same example again. Also interesting to see James Outman has been graded more than Corbin Carroll. Corbin Carroll, 183 on the Universal Pop report. PSA, 128. Beckett 3, SGC only 52, CGC 0. Now, why the difference here? Why the skew? PSA and SGC dominate the ultra modern market. On the, I don't want to use a Corbin Carroll as a lower end card, but a more common card like a refractor, you see that more even split between PSA and SGC. Because quite honestly, if you broke it down the comp difference between the two and you factor in the grading fees and the turnaround times, there's not that much difference between the two. Yes, the PSA 10 is going to outsell the SGC 10, but when you factor in the cost to grade and the turnaround times, it almost makes more sense to use SGC. Once again, that's a separate video. On the autograph, there's a bigger gap between the two, or it's a more perceived higher end card, and the perception of submitters is I need to send my nicer stuff to PSA. Churn and burn, turn a $20 card into a $100 card, send that thing off to SGC, get it back as fast as possible. Nicer, more valuable card, I'm going to send it off to PSA. And then there's some people on the lower end that are going to send the PSA regardless, hence why you see that more 50-50 split on that. Interesting part here, Beckett got 3. So even though this was an autograph card, the thing that Beckett's claim to fame is they got a whopping 3 of them. Once again, this is 2023 Topps Chrome Baseball. This came out in late July, early August. So you would think most of that stuff would at the pop report by now. I'm sure there is still some stuff making its way through the system because God knows what Beckett's doing over there. So that's kind of where we sit. That is kind of the current state of sports card grading and a little TCG grading. More on Universal Pop Report stuff later this week, as I believe Gemrate is going to be rolling this out to the masses and we could all get in there and play. Some fun stuff you could dig around in there. Some really good information I think people will be able to leverage. Talk about that later this week. Catch you on the next one. Peace.